up, Maggie? From the first time we went out. But once I lied, I continued to lie. Yes, sir.
Why?
You know, oh, what a tangled web we weave.
The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. SC Code -16-23-0490. CDR Code 0549. Verdict guilty.
Madam Clerk, what do you have to tell your jurors?
Thank you for your service.
Waking up and seeing Murdaugh's name in the news is about the same as waking up and finding out you have herpes, because there's absolutely nothing likable about this guy. But this turd has rights, and his rights matter more than your feelings. Plus, we have some really odd timing in that state's recent judicial truffle shuffle. So welcome to the point. Let's get to it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
I want everybody to be honest with me. How many times have you seen this guy's name pop in the news and said, I'm sick of hearing about it?
Dozens, if not hundreds. It's so many I can't tell you.
But he deserves his right to a fair trial, and if fair coverage and an open conversation is something you prefer, subscribe to this channel and hit that like button down below. Because even the most vocal attorney against Murdaugh and his defense team, Eric Bland, had this to say.
Well, Alex and his attorneys always viewed themselves as the organ grinder and the courts as the monkey. But in this case, it's just an ordinary appeal that anybody would do once convicted of by a jury. So I'm not surprised that the appeal was taken. It's a little bit of a surprise that it didn't go through the Intermediate Court of Appeals first to get to the Supreme Court. But it's an important issue, the issue of juror interference. And it's going to come down to whether the South Carolina Supreme Court believes that Justice Toal, the former Chief Justice who heard the motion for a new trial, was correct when she ruled that not only do you have to show that there was a potential inappropriate comment or inappropriate conduct by the former clerk of court, but that it influenced their jury verdicts. The defense says that they should have applied the federal standard.
Now, make no mistake about it, Eric Bland is 100% a showman, but an excellent attorney. But multiple things will be heard during this appeal, to include the change of venue and the financial crimes being allowed to be considered evidence during Murdaugh's trial for the passing of his wife and son. Now, I can personally see both sides of the argument in terms of allowing these financial charges to come into that trial. And if you agreed or disagreed with the financial charges being brought into that trial, let me know down in the comments below. But 100% for sure, they should have had a change of venue. Now, I'm from the South, and I can 100% assure you those small town folks can spread information and misinformation faster than you can type Google. And you can tell me if I'm wrong with what I'm about to say, because that's how an open conversation works. But do we not only have one person to blame here, which is Becky the Book Deal Hill, who's currently in some hot water of her own, to include her son who's been charged with wiretapping. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with y'all, you cannot make this crap up. The most viewed trial in South Carolina history, the one that's made both national and international news, is an absolute train wreck. This whole trial has been derailed by one small fish in a small pond, who, according to Judge Toal, sought fame and fortune. And no amount of money, fame, or power should trump our rights as citizens. And just in case you didn't know, those power-hungry little piranhas, they're all over the place, and they need to be weeded out with a fine-tooth comb. But despite all the allegations and this investigation into Becky Hill's actions, she has not been charged yet, which has a whole lot of people wondering why. And speaking of bizarre timing, listen to this.
And one of the big reasons for that, let's talk real quickly about the change in composition of the court. August 1, just 2 weeks ago, former Chief Justice Donald Beatty stepped down. Justice John Kittredge became the new Chief Justice, and then Letitia Verdon from Greenville took her seat on the court. So you've got a new Chief Justice, a new Justice.
Now, if you want more of all things South Carolina, I would highly recommend FitsNews. They do an excellent job of in-depth reporting, and they seem to have a real legitimate finger on the pulse of everything going on in South Carolina. But did you hear them talk about that carousel of change? And knowing that information, tell me down below what you think will happen now, because the debate is this. Judge Toal basically told Murdaugh's defense team they had to prove that there was tampering and it did alter the verdict, while Murdaugh's defense team is saying they just had to prove one or the other. And we all heard that juror say she heard Becky Hill talk, and what Becky Hill said influenced her decision. But the judge referred to State v. Green when she denied that motion for an appeal. Now, the alleged rumor floating around online is that the judicial system within South Carolina was going to absolutely get Murdaugh. But they didn't want to get him for what he did to his wife and son. They wanted to get him because he was an embarrassment. Because his actions alone set that state back 20 or 30 years in terms of public trust in their judicial system. And this was a huge embarrassment for every attorney in South Carolina.
Every client was transactional. And he has done more damage to our profession. All the lawyer jokes that we lie, we steal, we double deal, we go back in chambers with you, and we cut deals behind our client's back. He sent us back generations. Our state was a laughingstock.
But the moment we heard that juror check both of those boxes, at that specific moment, we were all thinking, okay, great, now we got to go to round 2. But we were met with a denial. But you have to ask yourself, who appointed Judge Toal to begin with? Well, the now retired Chief Justice Beatty, who was also the same judge that assisted Judge Newman in ensuring this thing went to trial, was the individual that put her in that position to deny that motion. Now, I'm not making the claim that this was some sort of nefarious plot like Murdaugh would have planned, and all this stuff may just be a coincidence, or it all may be just a misinterpretation of the black and white. But the real irony in this story is the case that Judge Toal referenced was a John Kitteridge case, who is now called Chief Justice Kitteridge because he's the individual that replaced Chief Justice Beatty. And I mean, honestly, you can't make this stuff up. And it's also been rumored that Chief Justice Kitteridge interpreted that ruling different than Judge Toal. And what's even crazier here, and you can tell me your thoughts on this as well, but a good chance of appeal is considered around 10%. Meaning that when you go to trial and say the jury finds you guilty and you want to file an appeal, they consider a good chance of that getting overturned around 10%. But what is being said right now is Murdaugh's chances of getting a new trial are somewhere around 50%. And that is absolutely mind-blowing. And this all stems back to one individual who apparently wanted to write a book. All this could have been avoided if Becky Hill would have done the job she was supposed to do instead of doing what she allegedly did. I'm personally guessing that all this stuff is going to go to trial again. And even though it's a waste of taxpayer money and time, this guy has rights. And we have to do these things the right way. We have to ensure everybody gets their fair day in court. It's a constitutional right. Let me know your thoughts on this down below. Y'all be safe now.